Thank you. We're going to begin with a moment of silence in memory of the following. Donald Brower, an employee of the North Syracuse Central School District. Suzanne Brogan, a retiree of the North Syracuse Central School District. Brenda Collier, a graduate of the North Syracuse Central School District. Teresa Miles, a retiree of the North Syracuse Central School District. Christopher Moyer, a graduate of the North Syracuse Central School District, and Frank Wentworth, a retiree of the North Syracuse Central School District. Thank you. Okay, we're going to start today. We have a proclamation for maintenance and operations. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to read that, and then we will present that to who's in attendance. The appearance of our buildings and grounds has a significant impact on the environment for suitable learning for our students, working conditions for district employees, and is a sense of pride for our community. The Maintenance and Operations Department employees contribute to the school, family, and community by upholding professional work standards, receiving timely training, and approaching all tasks in a strong collective spirit of teamwork, which contributes to their overall work effectiveness. They exhibit diligence, patience, and professionalism in adjusting to new challenges and situations that occur in the school buildings and grounds. To honor the Maintenance and Operations Department employees of the North Syracuse Central School District and their accomplishments, I, Paul Farfalia, President of the Board of Education of the North Syracuse Central School District, on behalf of the board, express our deepest gratitude and hereby declare the week of September 12th through September 16th, 2022, as Maintenance and Operations Appreciation Week to be celebrated with appropriate educational activities. Can I get a second for that? Second, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. Thank you.
Just want to have Jerry Pioletti, the union steward for maintenance and operations, and we'd like to give you the certificate and thank you and appreciation for maintenance and operations week. Thank you.
Okay, we have two presentations today, and the first is going to be an update on our federal stimulus ARP and CRISA funds from Mr. Keegan. It's all yours, Mr. Keegan.
Good evening. Well, I wanted to, or we wanted to share with the board and the public a little update on our federal stimulus funding. I think it's important to note that this represents over $19 million worth of funding that has been provided to us by the federal government to be spent over roughly a 3+ year period of time. And so we'll take these one at a time. CRSA stands for, as the board knows, the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriation. And that's $7.8 million. And these funds, we got these first, and these need to be spent by September of 23. So by a year from now, give or take. The purpose of them is to provide support academic recovery from the academic deficits that developed as a result of COVID. And we're using that for AIS teachers and teaching assistants. And I've got another slide that's going to give you a little more specifics, but we're using this money for instructional support, social emotional learning, restorative practices, family engagement counselors, and whatnot. Health services and COVID testing. And then to the extent, when this money became available, we were scrambling to get things in place. And to the extent that funds were used to offset expenditures that we did in fact have in our operating budget, it resulted in a certain amount of fund balance that the board will see when our audit is accepted here at the next meeting. To be the specifics on CURSA, we have been partnering with the county, and you'll see in the 21-22 and 22-23 money that we've used for both contact and promise zone specialists. We've brought in family engagement counselors, social workers, counselors and restorative practices folks, and that's indicated here as well. We've worked hard to get summer school programming in place, and you can see 3 summers worth of summer school programming is funded here. And COVID testing, it's kind of a funny thing. We all think of when I was putting the slide together, I was thinking COVID testing, or did we get all those free kits? How could that cost so much money? Well, if you remember in the beginning of COVID, people were going to the doctors and going to places to have testing done. And we spent over $1 million on COVID testing, which is pretty amazing. The rest of this is for health services. We're done with expensive testing, obviously, and then instructional positions and to support academic achievement. So $7.8 million for CURSA. This is how the money's being spent. As you can see, we're in the 22-23 school year. We've got the summer programming there. Most of this money is pretty much set in stone in terms of how it's going to be spent. The American Rescue Plan, that's $11.5 million. We've got an extra year on that one. Those funds don't need to be spent until September of 24. Again, the same types of things: academic recovery, lost learning time. We did spend money and continue to spend money on PPE, some furniture and equipment. You might say furniture and equipment, that's odd, but I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. And we were actually able to use some of this money to help the North Syracuse Early Education Program offset some of their COVID losses. It was really disruptive to their program to not have students in attendance. And again, to the extent that there was any budgeted items covered here, it did create a little bit of fund balance, or will create a little bit of fund balance. So diving into our one of the things that folks may remember is that we've got a lot of old furniture in our district, and a lot of it was really challenging as we went into COVID, and we looked at how to clean the furniture, how to position the furniture so that we could do social distancing, and also that same furniture created some problems relative to creating collaborative environments for our kids. And so one of the things we're allowed to spend money on is new furnishings. And so you can see we're planning on spending about $3.2 million. And I wish I could tell you that will refurnish all of our buildings, but furniture is expensive. We have a lot of furniture. And so we are, except for the Bear Road School, which was covered under the renovation, we'll be putting new furniture, not complete sets for the entire building, but a significant amount of new furniture out in our buildings over the next several years. And that's going to be a real enhancement to the health and also to the educational environment. Mobile technology, we continue to try to support our instructional staff with technology. We've got some money in there that we're working with our technology department for. We've got some additional family engagement counselors, and then additional extra pay and benefits for instructional support staff that work both summer school and after school programming. And then again, some additional positions to support academic and social emotional needs. So that's about $11.5 million there in ARP. Again, what I want to say about this money as we look at 23-24 is that there's a little bit of fluidity to it. And that's why we want to talk to the board. We want to be very transparent with the community and our constituents, because to the extent that needs change, we can redirect some of this 23-24 money and fine tune that. But this is where it's scheduled right now to be spent. The big thing that I think all of us are aware of is, what is life post CURSA and ARP like? And so, the first question is, will the academic gaps and SEL issues be substantially addressed before the funding ends in 24? If not, how will programs be sustained when these federal funds are no longer available? We're very lucky to have amazing partnerships with the county and it's critical to some of the long-term care and support of our students. And we would very much like to continue those programs. And the next item is, will the grant funding be able to supplement the general fund to sustain, academic, these essential academic services? And so we're gonna be looking at, talking to our legislators as we do every year about, what's the state thinking about in terms of transitioning from ARP and CURSA to general fund, funding for schools, and specifically, what's the future of state aid looking like? And this will be our last year going into, next year will be the last year of the completing of the foundation aid funding. And we're hoping that any update to formulas, will ensure a sound basic public education for our kids, and also potentially help us sustain some of this ongoing programming. So very brief presentation. Again, we wanted the board to see this. We wanted this out on our website so that the community could see it. And we welcome any feedback from the community in terms of their thoughts on how this money is being spent and whether they believe it's effective. Any questions or concerns?
I have concerns.
Yeah.
Not with your presentation. I mean, I appreciate your last set of questions and statements, and they're far from rhetorical. I mean, look at the first one, and we've talked about addressing the gaps. And I was at a NSBA conference, and somebody ran an algorithm, and then, when you say the word algorithm right away, there's probably two people who write it, who understand what it even means and says, but they were trying to calculate how far behind on average in New York State students are based upon, the last 2 years. And they said it came down to about 12 weeks, up to a third of the year. And then when they broke it down further, it, not surprisingly, falls along lines of poverty, where you see obviously even further behind. And then those who came back in person sooner, as opposed to those who stayed virtual, there's even more of a gap there. So that is a real concern, and something we have to look at as we talk about one of your further down questions, resources. How do we sustain what we have when this money from the federal government is not there? And I know when I was at NSBA, there was a lot of talk about that amongst board members from around the state. And later on, I'll just reference the piece of paper I put together for everybody from that conference, where there are some districts looking at some, I'll say, creative ideas of how to reallocate resources to try and address this going forward. So it's going to be quite a challenge. So again, those are my concerns. I don't have a comment, but I'm concerned with that. And like it or not, the reality of the potential political environment and the impact of that on us.
Yeah.
Which is horrible that I have to even say that, but I worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Don, you mentioned where could this money be allocated elsewhere? You would like maybe some input as to where there are, I'm sure, parameters.
There are, but one of the things we found with both ARP and CURSA is there's a lot of latitude. They really wrote these grants for school. Obviously it's focused on academic gaps and social emotional needs, before and after school programming to address those things, as well as summer programming. But there's a lot of latitude in how the money's being spent, and we're trying to spend it in the most impactful ways. So we just want that conversation to happen with parents in the community, so that they can weigh in to the extent that they have thoughts.
So for our more food insecure schools, which we've got Roxborough that's covered by grants, we have others that aren't.
Yeah.
Can any of this can we use it for the?
No, that's interesting. No, that's a great question, but no, we can't buy food with this program. I will say that because the Rocks campus, both Rocks L and Rocks Middle, Smith Road, the North Syracuse Early Education Program, all being covered full, the BOCES at Thompson Road, all being covered full under the community eligibility provision. We're really have a full court press right now on getting applications in from other families. We still have a lot of our families in the other schools that are automatically qualified. And so we're trying to get the word out. I think we worked, this is good that you brought this up. We worked so hard to make sure people knew we were going back to a paid program that in the first week of school last week, we had a lot of confusion, more than we expected. We had people who were entitled to free meals who didn't know they were entitled to free meals. So we had to put a lot more messaging out last week. So we're trying to beat the drums to get the applications in and get as many kids on free meals that are, should be economically entitled to those. And that's our full court press right now, but no, we can't use this for food.
So my next question would be for the junior high and high school students that want to go to the canteen but can't get there. Can any money be directed towards busing?
Yeah, I thought we had, we were putting those kids on shuttles after school up to the canteen. We did that last year. I haven't heard that there's a gap in that, meaning that there are still kids that want to come. Dan, you may know more than I on that one.
My understanding that shuttle is still running.
Yeah,
And so I will have our usual meeting with Connie Taros and Jamie to see if there's any issues or the numbers, and if there's a transportation issue.
yeah,
sit and
we'll
talk
do
and
everything we can to
we'll
plug that.
regroup.
Yeah.
All right. I do remember some conversation last year about there being some sort of gap.
Yeah. Okay. And to the extent there is, we'll do some investigating on that. And certainly we want to close that gap as best we can.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and now we have a presentation from Ms. Lisa Goldberg, which is going to be on the social studies program, as well as, well, your director of social studies and SEL, correct?
Thank you. I'm so excited that I get to speak with you about social studies tonight. It is my heart. So I wanted to really talk about three specific areas of focus in social studies. One is around connection and communication, both in terms of vertical alignment, meaning K-12, and also horizontal alignment within a grade level. And what we're learning in terms of the new skills that our students need in this environment with a new global and a new US history Regents. Not that the Regents is the whole be all and end all of social studies, but it is our summative assessments. And so we want kids prepared for them. And lastly, I want to speak with you a little bit about something that I've dreamt about for a really long time, and that the state, I believe, is getting right regarding a civics program. So first and foremost, if we agree, and I hope we will, that all new learning builds on prior learning, it's of utmost importance that as children go through our school system, K through 12, that there is a consistency and a coherence to what and how they're learning. And for, I have to say, from about 2019, we started some work, 512, and you'll have a little audience participation about K4 in a minute. But we started to do some curriculum work, 512, and that was really mind-blowing. Last March, the Ides of March, the 15th, we had a half day and we brought the entire 512 social studies department together, which we had not done probably for about 15 years. And thank you, Dave Wise, he suggested that. And it was powerful because we had a presentation of the new global regions. And so we had 5th grade teachers and 6th grade teachers who were saying, wow, look at how much reading. Wow, look at the charts, look at the graphs, look at the political cartoons. We have to really ensure that kids are getting the skills that they need in 5th grade that will then be built upon so that they have what they need for these exams. And so this real goal of having coherence K-12 is with us, and I'm really glad that we're on the road to achieving that. Our district has invested in eDoctrina, which is an online platform, and it's really a wonderful storage platform, but more than a storage platform. It really, we are just beginning to scratch the surface. We just started working with it this summer. The social studies team that had been working the last couple of years started to input a lot of the unit planning and resources that we'd built the last couple of years. And this is going to be an unbelievable tool for us in terms of horizontal alignment. First of all, not only in real estate, but turns out in curricular and assessment work, it's all about location, location, location. If I can't access the materials that we've collaborated on and created together, then they do me no good. And so to be able to have a consistent, uniform system that all members of a department can access will be absolutely amazing. So this will give us a coherence and a consistency across a grade level. Let's take, for example, middle schools. We have 2 middle schools, and within those middle schools, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade. We want to ensure that not only does 5th grade, for example, have coherency and consistency within a building, but across both buildings. We know that there is movement between our middle schools throughout the year. So the idea that a student can leave from one middle school and go to another and not miss a beat is kind of our goal. And so I'm terribly excited about this, and we're learning so much from and with each other. In addition to having an opportunity to do this unit planning and looking at how we might store and share lesson and resource ideas, we're starting to look at some coordination and consistency around assessment strategies, which is also really exciting. And I think as we move forward into the future, this will be absolutely invaluable in terms of new teacher acclimation and resources. I have to say gratuitously that there is that conversation among teachers who teach the same subject is absolutely invaluable. And some of the most powerful conversation we've had around our unit design happened under the auspices of learning about this platform. So we really started to talk about what are the power standards, what is most important to be inputted. It was some of the best learning I've been a part of. So I was really grateful. So now it's your turn. Any question you might want to ask that might be prompting on the screen?
Well, just with regards to e-doctrine, I'm
Yes.
vaguely familiar with it because we were looking at it at one point and something I did 100 years ago, not that long, but, and we use a similar, well, we use a different piece of software online that did similar things for what we were doing without getting too detailed. So the one we use was totally not intuitive. I just wonder how user-friendly e-doctrina is, number one, and number two, you were able to store, you mentioned resources. We were able to put in links, we were able to put in PDF copies of either homework or activities or assessments, and all that can be shared with everybody. Okay,
Yes.
I don't want to hear, I don't want you to hurt yourself. Colin.
And I'm a big nodder, so I
No,
couldn't
but
hurt
it's,
myself.
you know, besides the user friendliness, it wasn't there in the one I used, we used, it was phenomenal, the amount of storage, like you said. I know it's more than storage, but storage and sharing that can occur with that. And I believe from what I understood with this, it was a little more intuitive. I don't know where we just purchased it.
We just started. We were really fortunate. At the beginning of August, Mark Krause from BOCES came, and he came ostensibly for a 2-hour training. He literally trained the staff, or social studies staff that was there. It was 15 minutes. And they were like, yeah, we got this. Like, it was really easy. And what's really going to be amazing is that if I'm a 5th grade teacher, I keep picking on 5th grade teachers, but if I'm a 5th grade teacher, I can log in, and it doesn't matter if I'm at Rox or Gillette. I have access. We're all looking at the same materials. And so, and it's different from a Google Doc. It's not a Google Doc, but it also, we need something that is going to be steady, irrespective of who retires or who moves or who's added in. And I'm looking really forward to this. The directors and a team of us spent several months working with Chris and really digging into what kind of a platform do we want, not just for today, but moving forward. And eDoctrina has, as you know, a suite of things that it can do, but
My
one step
understanding
at
is
a
they
time.
can customize it to what you
Yes.
read. Okay, thank you.
But,
Uh,
and
mm.
did you have a question?
got an odd question. Can you tell me about social studies K through 4?
I am so glad you asked. Thank you. What a brilliant, insightful question.
Yeah, he's a plant.
He was not a plant. So as you know, our elementary teachers are in the throes of working on CKLA, and over the last couple of years have had a lot of things on their plates. I'm trying to be sort of not Captain Obvious, but we need to do some work. And Greg and I have had lots of conversation. And every time I see Nicole Kulkowski, I'm like, got a big project coming for you. And the woman who never sits down. And essentially, once we get up and running with CKLA, what we're hoping to do mid-year is to bring together a group of teachers who worked on the pilot, who actually have a love of social studies, who can begin to align what's in CKLA with the state standards so that we can mix and match. I will say anecdotally, last year I had the privilege of observing a first grade class, and I happened to come in on a day, it was a pilot class for CKLA, and they were talking about Mesopotamia. I almost fell off my chair in terms of students' engagement and fluidity with a lot of social studies related content and vocabulary. So I'm super excited about literacy and social studies and the partnership and marriage they're going to have. So thanks for your question. So to go on to our second area of skill building, and that's the skills that you need for not only social studies, but that are used in social studies. And these skills come from the New York State Social Studies Framework, and they're listed there. Under instructional steps, you see a lot of the usual suspects that teachers would use in lesson design and unit design. But I want to point out specifically this idea of integration of reading and writing and literacy. And I call your attention to this quote. It's not just a literacy program, it's a buy-in of the community. They all realize that reading has an impact on what they do in everyday life. So reading, we know, is fundamental, but it is absolutely fundamental to social studies. And when we talk about literacy in social studies, it's more than just reading. You'll note that's at the bottom, and we'll get there in a second. But it is a specific content and skill set. And again, all of these skills are used in lots of disciplines, but when you look specifically at social studies, you're applying these skills to content and to, it's not listed here, but to maps, to photographs, to artifacts. So it is really understanding literacy in its most fulsome description. And when we talk about the new Regents exams, I would like us to engage in a little critical thinking experience. I'm going to introduce you to Hello Global Regents. This was the Global Regents this past June. Now, as I scroll through, and I'll try to do it slowly, I want you to take a note. Look, there's a map, there's a cartoon, passage, 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 passage. Oh, look, cartoon. There's another map, passage, passage, map, passage, 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 photo, passage, and passage. So that takes care of the short answer. Now we have two essay or short, we have two short answer constructed responses, CRQs. But wait, map, passage, passage, passage. And now we get to the enduring essay, during issues essay. Passage, 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 passage. Oh, photo. So I bring that up because not only do you have reading, but you also have a lot of writing, all of which requires tremendous stamina. What we learned about this time during the pandemic is that students were not, wait for it, reading and writing a lot. And so I know that's shocking, call the papers. And so we also live in a time where there are not a lot of paper or print materials, books, magazines, newspapers in homes. All of our reading is, most of our reading is digital. And so how to teach this reading and how, just going to be honest, how should secondary teachers approach this work? Now, we are really fortunate that many of our secondary social studies teachers also have degrees in reading, but not all. And so I kept calm and I called Nicole Kulikowski and the team of instructional coaches who met with me and some of our folks from the high school and talked about the need for some training in the science of reading. Because whether secondary teachers like it or not, it's imperative that they have the skills that they need to teach reading and writing to kids. Now, they've always taught writing and they've dabbled in reading, but we are talking about the science of reading. We may have students at grade 10 who have trouble decoding, who don't read fluently. What do you do about that when you have that kind of lift? And we're talking about passages from the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th centuries. So this is not, reading, the interweb blog of some kind. It's hard to read. So there was some, I was premature. There was some summer learning and there will be continuous learning, but this has landed really well with both Jamie Sullivan and Connie Taros. I think this is something that we need. So I'm very excited about this. And lastly, speaking about excitement, I think everybody, especially students, especially now, needs something to connect with that's larger than themselves and that proves that they can, in fact, make a difference in the world. And so I think this quote by Colin Powell, and I'll read it, I know you can read it, but I think it's really powerful. Service learning is a particularly fertile way of involving young people in community service because it ties helping others to what they're learning in the classroom and enables them to apply academic disciplines to practical everyday problems. In the process, it provides a compelling answer to the adolescent's perennial question, why do I need to learn this stuff? And we rise by lifting others. It is in service to others that many of us find out who we are. So, and as if New York State needed a social studies framework foundational touch point for a robust civics, it's one of the top 5. And these are how the state defines their big 5 standards. So there you'll see civics and citizenship highlighted. Many of you may know that a couple of years ago, under the great and dynamic effort of Heather Pukta, who's currently our housewarming principal at CNS, our system adopted the seal of biliteracy, bless you, on our diplomas. New York State came out, I believe it was in October of 2020, with the seal of civic readiness. And so this is a designation that would be that students could earn to have on their diplomas. And it incorporates the 4 skills and dispositions of civic readiness: civic knowledge, civic skills and actions, civic mindsets, and civic experiences. So here are the criteria. Students have to earn a total of 6 points, with 2 coming from civic knowledge and 2 coming from civic participation. What I especially love about the way that they crafted this is that it's crafted like a lesson objective. What are students going to know and be able to do? And I love the practicality of that. And I also love the fact that this is something that is accessible for all students and involves not only, some very organic things. So if they take 4 credits of social studies, they earn a point. If they get proficient on their social studies Regents exam, each Regents exam, they earn a point for each of that. If they achieve mastery, it's 1.5. So you're just by taking 4 credits of social studies, and even if you're just proficient, you've got 3 points already. And then if you look on the right side of this, there are some great hands-on experiences. And it is so often that students have the things that they remember, the things that they actually did with their hands, and experience with their hearts. And so I think this is an unbelievable opportunity to get our kids involved in something bigger than themselves. And we're off to a great start because we already have a bunch of stuff built, which is incredible. So as you know, back in 2019, Matt Root and then later Matt Root and Mark Parrish from CNS Social Studies noticed that there were kids that were hungry. And Matt did some research around districts in New York State and found out about snack packs, snack bags, and found out that there were community organizations that from which you can gather food to distribute in school. And so he started this work prior to COVID-19 hitting us in 2019. And in that first year, disseminated 300 bags. Last year, he was over 6,800. And that doesn't include the 50 bags at CNS, the 75 at the canteen, and 225 family food boxes. What are those? Those are boxes literally of chicken and pasta and rice and cheese and sometimes frozen vegetables. And this doesn't include the family food boxes that go out from Roxelle. In addition, last year, Matt got a phone call from, I believe it was Beth Robbins at Rox Middle School and said, hey, we're going to start this after school gathering where kids can hang out and play games and get academic help if they need it, but we need to give them some way of socializing after school. Do you have any snacks? And so Matt did not hesitate. And so he provided snacks for rock stars. We also have our participation in government classes and our AP government classes who both Mark and Matt's classes have helped assemble these bags. About a year ago, Mark Parrish started, maybe it was longer than that, Mark Parrish started a modern civics class. And so even before we left the gate, these are things that we have in place. As we look to this year, we have a TOSA position that was created where Matt and Mark will each teach their, Matt will teach participation in government, Mark will teach his participation in government and his modern civics class. And then the other part of their job, they will create programming so that 100% every single senior who leaves our district will participate in this service learning project. And that means that they will learn about food insecurity and poverty, and they will understand some of the policy around food programming in the United States, and they will assemble these meals that will then get distributed to others. And I'm really glad you brought up the idea about food insecurity, because there are some students who leave school on Friday and may not eat again until Monday. And so these snack bags are absolutely essential for kids. So in addition to getting our seniors participating, we will expand our food distribution programs to all buildings. And in fact, standardize the referral process so that we're not missing anyone in any building who might be interested. And we'll coordinate with what's already happening in each building. Additionally, Matt and Mark will be looking to develop some service learning opportunities starting in 7th grade so that students as young as 7th grade can not only accrue credits toward the SEAL, but can have that experience of serving others. And lastly, you know, civics is a part of all social studies classes, but Matt and Mark will support teachers in really developing the aspects of those classes. The belief is that this year we'll be able to get our program infrastructure created so that next year we apply for the SEAL, and starting in the fall of 24, we offer that. And some of our students will have already accrued experiences, so they may be able to graduate right off the bat with that SEAL. So I am pumped about this, I just have to say. And so thank you for this opportunity. Here are the links to the civic readiness materials as well as the global readiness if you'd like to take it at your leisure. And I could not be more excited about the good things that are growing here. Any questions?
I have a lot too, so let's start. You start.
Want to turn the lights on, Michael, please? Thank you.
Yes.
Question number one. How did we, now, is the global exam, was it 9th or 10th grade? Because it's been changed, we had 2 years of global. That's,
Yeah.
it's just one or is
No,
it-
it's still two.
it's still two. So the test is the end of 10th grade. And how did we do last year? Don't we know?
We did great. It was 90. I'm blanking on it. Of course, I didn't write it down. But we did really well, but it was the first year through and the grid was very generous. And so, as it should be. And
Yes.
so, I'm not sure what the state is going to do this year, and I'm hoping that the US grid will be equally as generous. Historically, no pun intended, our social studies, students have done a great job on both exams.
And question, and I know you have a lot of work, but I think this board would like to see the elective courses that we have at the high school. For instance, now I'll start talking. We have a new course this year, current events. I'm so thrilled that this course is up at our high school, but I think the board needs to see that we have psychology and we have these courses because we offer things that other schools don't. I believe our social studies department is one of the strongest in Central New York. I know a lot of them. I've been in their rooms. You are the best leader. When this came up last year, I think it's less than a year you've been social studies. I jumped up to the ceiling because you are going to turn this program into one of the even better than it was. The civics program at the high school, which this board approved with the staff personnel, having Mr. Root and Mr. Parrish teach this. You couldn't have two greater guys who care about poverty, care about our students. And this has been wanting in our school district for civics. I'm glad the state is going there. Now I'm going to get to the elementary. I am still concerned about, I've talked to you personally about this, but I want the board to know. K-4 social studies, it's difficult for our teachers in the time frame to do the justice for this program. I know, and I'm not disagreeing with you, you went into a first grade classroom. I'm sorry, learning through the science of reading about Greece or whatever is not what should be doing in first grade. Our reading series, yes, has a lot of social studies and a lot of science, but it's reading. I'm sure you remember Lisa reading in the content areas with Dr. Herber, and that's what we're these people talk.
Hal Herber.
Yes,
Syracuse
there you
University,
remember.
yeah.
So we're going back
I
to
have the
that,
book.
and that's, the graphs and charts. So I'm glad. But at the elementary level, I go back to when I was student teaching, or I go back to when I was in my third grade or fourth grade, and even second grade. We need to teach about the community. They don't know about the North Syracuse community. They don't know about the Plank Road. That's historical in our community. Who was Town of Clay named after? When I taught it at Carl W. Siley Bear Road, we had a whole booklet that I would start the year with about our town and what it was about. And the thing that's really sad is citizenship. It is not being taught. And we know what's happening in this country. Children don't know at 5 or 6. Why did these people go and try to take our government? They don't understand what's happening. And I'm just hoping that more and more of this is going to be taught in the elementary. However, our teachers have to teach a certain reading, which is very, very important. They have to teach math. And last year, Mary Scanlon, when I asked one of the teachers to tell about the schedule, not much was said about social studies and science. Dan Bowles knows Sarah Bowles loves social studies. Okay. She got a perfect score on the science, but she really, truly liked social studies and worked for a congressman in our state because she loves social studies. I taught it every day. I fit it in. It may be hands-on one day, we learned about the Native Americans, New York State history. We went to Albany, and that's another thing our school district needs to improve on our field trips. You learn by going to, and we have so much history. So I'm worried about that, and I don't know what can be done. I think Mr. Stone and you and Mr. Rice need to get together and help our element, because you're doing wonderful things with the middle school and the junior high and the high school. And then I want to end up is that, yes, there was a gentleman that passed away this week, Ray Salvi. I don't know if Chris remembers when he was principal at Lakeshore. Every year at Flag Day, they had people come from World War II, Korean War, to meet with the students. And Ray was in the Battle of Iwo Jima in 1945. And he would talk to the kids about that. That's what we need to do more of at the elementary level. So that's just my opinion. I think we've got the leader here, but there's places we have to go.
Yeah, just a couple, I'll try and keep mine down to 10 minutes. No, I just love the service learning part. I mean, it's a lot of people confuse that with community service, which is just a small little piece of the service learning, which expands it to the understanding of why do we do this? What's the bigger issue? What's the big takeaway? So I thank you for that. That's exciting. The civics piece is it kind of ties to Mr. Keegan did a presentation and he had a little blurb at the end about a sound basic education. And they happened to be the discussion at the school boards conference about when they talk about CFE. And interesting, when the lawyers brought the case forth, part of what they had to do is define what is a sound basic education. And if you look online, you can find their statement, and it's in this paper I left everybody, but I wrote it down so I could read it here because it ties into this. So children are entitled to an education that provides them skills they need to be capable of voting and serving on a jury and to obtain competitive employment. So I thought that was fascinating that that's how they defined sound basic education for that case, which is based on what the foundation formula is based on. If you go back 20 plus years, the Pataki administration defined it as an 8th grade education. So we've come a ways. That's a true story, I believe, but check it out. My concern is, I mean, I'm sure this board would support what I think needs to happen at the secondary level anyway. We have to teach students to grapple with the complex history of this country, and there's no pretty way to do it. And unfortunately, as I say that, we're embattled in these culture wars across this state and this country. And we've been more or less shielded from it here at this board, but not the case at some of our very close neighbors. So how do we discuss controversial issues that need to be discussed in classes like civics or citizenship and government? And how do you do it respectfully? How do you teach students to engage with each other with whom they disagree with in a respectful manner? So I don't know what training I mean, it even goes as far as, I hate to push it over to Mr. Thorne here, but some school districts actually have a policy now on how controversial issues are supposed to be handled in class. So I say that saying I would do anything I could do to support any discussions that need to occur where teachers facilitate, or obviously they're not going to take either side, but these kind of discussions need to occur. I mean, I hate to quote, they quoted Thomas Jefferson, then they weren't sure it was him or not, but they said educated citizenry is a vital requisite for our survival as a free people. I'm worried that we're avoiding topics sometimes. I'm not saying North Syracuse, but as a society right now, we're avoiding topics that are uncomfortable. You know, you mentioned our students don't read a lot of news articles or whatever. They're aware, though, that there's a lot of controversy going on, that there are different sides of this issue they hear about all the time. They're aware that there is something going on in this place, Ukraine, but it's over there and it doesn't impact them, but they're aware. And I don't think they fully understand how to process all this. And I think we need to play a role in that, especially in the high school. So that's just I appreciate anytime you come for a presentation. I know I have to read it and then I start taking notes because I know it's going to be great. And I appreciate the passion with which the passion you have with everything you do. That's what I want to tell you.
Well, I happen to have the best job in the world, so I get to do the two things I really love. So with people I love. So it's pretty
You're
great.
incredibly good at it.
Yeah,
So
so thank you.
Appreciate it. Really appreciate that.
If I could just make a comment, thank you. It was nice learning about this. I'm just looking at like the scope of your job, and I could see SEL and social studies, but I would just think the scope of that is huge, especially with SEL now the way that it is. So like I'm thinking that, you know, even though yes, you could make that they intersect, but they're really, this is huge. The SEL part is huge, and all the people that you would have to supervise there. And then you got the curriculum piece here, and you want to, how's that working?
I'm not bored and
I
I'm
would
pretty
think
busy.
not.
Yeah. So I have to say, it's a big job.
Yeah, yeah,
And these are not throwaway things. They're very critical to this moment.
yeah, yeah. And you're able to do that
So far.
so far?
Yeah, but
Okay, I
but,
was just
yeah.
wondering.
I mean, I think I'm somebody who maybe it's a little adult ADD, who's to say, but I like the variety of it. And I also see the creation of classroom communities where we create a community where we can disagree without being disagreeable. And we're in a book study right now that actually Catherine Doughton from BOCES recommended. It's called Not Light But Fire by Matthew Kay, who's a teacher in Philadelphia. And he really lays it out how to create a classroom community where we can talk about hard things. And that's not to say that we're not in the business of teaching kids what to think. It's how to think and how to be discerning as human beings and how, so I'll close with this. I have an aunt and uncle. My uncle is Gino Delfino, you can't make this up, and my Aunt Elisa, and they are politically 180 degrees. And they have been married for almost 70 years because they argue ideas, not each other. And I think that's what the goal is, right? Because that's the strength of democracy, that we get to have our own perspectives.
absolutely. I think they need to teach that in school of how to
Mhm.
argue kindly. But I had more to say to you than just you're doing a wonderful job. That's okay. There's a few things that you're looking to do as far as, you know, the food insecurity, the working together, the doing something greater than themselves. And we have grant money that we've talked about before. We've got that. I've got a connection to those hydroponic plants. If there's any way to get that done, that would cover all those boxes. So let me know if there's something that we can do to make that move forward.
I'll have Matt and Mark reach out. Thank you.
And thank you for doing such an incredible job.
Any other questions or comments?
I'll just say, Lisa, this district and this community is so incredibly fortunate to have you here. I mean, seriously, everything that you get yourself involved in comes together almost perfectly, and the results from that can be seen. The board knows it, the district knows it, the community can see it. You know, you're taking notes on all the comments that Mr. Crabtree said, but what Paul said about political disagreements and how do we teach that and how do we inform students and really everybody on how to have a proper conversation. Because it's not happening today. You know, what people see on TV, social media, everything is targeted. So people don't see the other side of an argument. So it only enforces a decision, it enforces the idea that somebody looks up, and it's dangerous. And I know that you're going to be able to solve this here. So no question in my mind that you're going to find the solution on how we can teach this.
By the end of the week, you will.
So,
Yeah, maybe tomorrow. Thank you.
so no, really, thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Super kind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board of Education Committee reports. I'll just go over to Mr. Thorne on policy. We have a date or just,
Believe we have our first policy meeting next week. On Tuesday. And yes, via Zoom.
okay. Mr. Crabtree,
October 5th.
okay, via Zoom, obviously, right, and that which has been great. And you saw in Mr. Keegan's presentation, plenty of work cut out for us this year, huh? Okay, now I just wanted to report that the Health and Safety Committee met this morning, just to let the board know that. You could get minutes to that are taken through Mr. Keegan's office if you're interested. And Facilities and Audit Committee meet tomorrow. And as you saw in an email from our clerk, that we have a retreat date of the Monday, the 24th here. When I talked to the board here, we kind of nodded our head that we could do it off Monday, so that one's working for most. So I just wanted to mention that before I followed up with an email with a survey attached. So we have the Google form survey, and I think it'll work because I keyed it in. So I'm going to think I send it directly to the email and not link it through board docs. It should be fine there. So I will do that this week, but I wanted you to be aware of that because I know how easy it is to kind of have emails get buried and lost. So I'll give you a heads up on that. All right, other superintendent comments.
Thank you, Paul. I just want to say that as of today, I've been in all 11 schools with our opening, and it has been probably some of the best days for opening of school that I can remember. And I've been in the district for 25 years. The teachers, the students, the work that went in this summer, people are rejuvenated, they've recharged, they are ready to go across the board. And it showed every single day over the last few days. We've had some elementary open houses are coming up. There was a back to school barbecue at Sister Roel on Friday night. If people had gone to the football game at Friday, there's so much going on. The night before, there was a volleyball game in the high school gymnasium against Baldwinsville. There was tennis going on. The campus, the district is alive again, and it is clearly showing, and people are excited. There is a marching band home show that I know I'm going to this weekend. All these activities that kind of were took a backseat initially, we started to get back into it. People are ready to go, and they want to get back to all the things that the students and the families have enjoyed that kind of took a back seat. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to getting out and about. Was able to get in some buildings, and Senator Mannion was with us at Lakeshore the other day. The students and the families look great coming into the buildings, and I just can't be prouder of our staff, our administrators, the students, and the families, because it was amazing this past week.
Okay, thank you. Board of Education comments. I'm just going to make one quickly and I'll see who else. It's just the paper I left that Jill had copied for everybody on your table. Again, those are the notes I've referred to them a couple times today from the New York State School Boards Conference. So those are for you to kind of cruise through. If you have any questions about anything, I tried to summarize it so it wasn't that long. You could see I was not successful in doing that, but if you have any questions, please let me know on that. And if you're interested and available, NSBUD conference is going to be in Syracuse the 27th, 28th, and 29th of October. And Jill did put out that information in email if you wanted to register. Other comments?
I have something to say. I just wanted to correct what I said last time. I said October 11th for the Chris Gates Memorial Game. It's actually October 7th against Liverpool for the Chris Gates Memorial Game. They are still looking for sponsors to line the home and away fences. And if you have any questions or comments, contact Matthew Gates, who is the varsity football team assistant coach. Thank you.
Real quick, if I may, diversity, equity, and inclusion is becoming a more and more of the forefront of people's minds, and to the fact, as a financial advisor, CE credits, it is now mandatory. I take 1 hour of diversity, equity, and inclusion to renew my license, and if I don't get that license. One of the things that I found interesting is that we don't even think about is when you're having a meeting or a gathering of any kind, you cannot just provide the food. You have to ask, because there might be somebody who's vegan, there might be somebody who can't eat a certain meat. There are things of that nature that are happening where employers cannot just simply order a pepperoni pizza and hand it over. You could be not respecting somebody who has certain religions, choices, whatever it might be in their life. So these small differences that actually can be major for someone is a reason that we need to have more exposure with diversity, equity, and inclusion. I thought I knew a lot. Never thought of that one. It was impressive to hear that training, and interesting that New York State has now made it a requirement that they want every financial advisor to understand what's involved.
Interesting. Thank you.
My 3 minutes starts, Joe. Okay. I have a lot. I can see it in Dan, the excitement, but I'm not going to go to my Facebook page. I attended an annual breakfast with our controller, our state controller, Tom DiNapoli. I've given Don a booklet. He basically spoke about, we went through some tough times, but things are picking up at the state level. And I was glad to hear that. Sounds like there is some money, a lot of money in their fund. So hopefully when our budget comes about, but what he does every year is he honors somebody or honors 3 or 4 people, and some of them are politicians. But the last person he honored was the president of Lemoyne College. I don't know how much we know about her, but she's done a really good job at Lemoyne, and she was honored. And I thought that was great. I got to visit with 2 superintendents, and for 2 different reasons. Jeremy Belfield is the superintendent of Lafayette. And the reason I went to see him, and I told Dan that I was, is that he is the facilitator of the superintendents of BOCES for legislative. So I sat down with him for 45 minutes, and he has given me some topics because we want to work together. We want to have boards of educations work together with superintendents. What are they looking for? Foundation aid was one of them, but we talked about STEM and getting funding for that and so forth. So I wanted to know that. But then, Mr. Irwin, he's smiling. I went to my alma mater, and I found out beautiful roads that go from Lord's Hill, from Lafayette to Onondaga Central. Onondaga Central is special to my heart because it's my alma mater, but they just had a major renovation. And to go into their high school and see what some of the things we're going to do, auditorium, gym, cafeteria, and so forth, it was amazing to go back. And then I had a chance to go to Rockwell, and I happened to meet a lovely lady named Mrs. Irwin, who works in Rockwell in the very kindergarten room that I was in 1954. She's a wonderful lady, and we spoke well. So it was just great to get and to visit. But I want to tell you, Mr. Bowles, and I know you talk about teamwork and everything else. You are looked upon as one of the strongest superintendents in Onondaga County. Superintendents can't say enough about you are a team player. You bring up topics that may interest smaller school districts and larger school districts. So I want to thank you publicly. This is your beginning of your 4th year as superintendent, and you've gone through a difficult time with COVID and so forth. And we're going to have some more difficulties looking at SEL and academics. But thank you. From all of us, I think we are proud to call you our superintendent. I wanted to say that. And then the last thing was two things. I know, hurry up, Crabtree. I went to the Cicero Elementary barbecue. This means a lot to me. You'll understand this. And I ran into Jeremy Schauer and Lauren Rodriguez, who were fourth grade students in my classroom. They met in my classroom. They dated in high school and they got married, and they have two wonderful children that are attending Cicero. To me, that is a story, amazing story. The other amazing one is that Xavier and I went to the game on Friday night, and at halftime I was down on the field. I wanted to see what the band was like on the field. I always see them up above. Saw this football player, number 43. He had his helmet still on. Football team left the to go talk about how they could play better or whatever. And he's pushing the xylophone. I said, well, this guy is awesome. He's helping this young lady. He should be in the locker room, whatever. No, Mr. Crabtree, he plays the xylophone. So not only is he on our football team, number 43, Drake Helm, but he plays the xylophone in our marching band. Isn't that what it's all about? That's awesome. Thank you for letting me go over 3 minutes.
Thank you. Other comments? Seeing none, we're going to move on to routine action items. I'll look for a motion for consideration or approval of the minutes of the August 29th meeting. Motion from Ms. Kruger, second from Dr. Kramer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. For a motion for B and C, the classification of disabled students for school placement and for placement in home instruction. Motion from Ms. Agru, second from Mr. Thorne. Any questions? Comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Discussion action items. Item A, recommendation to abolish a district traveling registered nurse position. Motion to put that before us. Motion from Dr. Kramer, second from Mr. Moody Woosick. That is before us. Any questions?
I do have a quick
Yes.
question. The traveling nurse, wasn't that to fill a need? Is that need no longer there for the extra nurses?
What we did during COVID, we tried to make sure there was so much work that needed to be done that we were staffing so heavily. So we've staffed most of our buildings with 2 nurses now. And we did have 2 people leave. And the one position that is, because we were doing a lot of testing and a lot of other things, so some of the requirements are no longer. So right now, this traveling nurse is not needed like it was before when we were in the midst of all the requirements.
Any other? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Motion for B, to create a 1.0 FTE in ESL. Motion from Dr. Kramer, second from Ms. Kruger. That was explained to us in the recent Friday letter. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. Declaration of marketable and non-marketable surplus. A motion, please put that before us. Motion from Dr. Kramer, second from Mr. Thorne. That is before us, all typed up, all of it. Any? Yeah. Seeing no questions, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Acknowledgement of a gift D, please. A motion, put that before us. Motion, Mr. Maurizio, second from Mr. Moody Woosick. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. And E, scoreboard sponsorship. Motion from Dr. Kramer, second from Ms. Agru. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Item F, please. A motion, place that before us. Contract award for Smith Row Elementary. Motion from Ms. Kruger, second from Mr. Maurizio. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. And the amendment of the contract award for the HVAC project. Motion, put that before us from Mr. Maurizio, second from Ms. Agru. That was a correction that we had an email about. Seeing no comments, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. Thank you. We have retirements to acknowledge. We have two today before us are on the personnel reports coming up. We have Bonnie Brazil, teaching assistant, retiring with 7.4 years of service, and Lori Close, social worker, retiring with 20.5 years of service. So thank you to them for their service to us and happy retirement. Motion then to place instructional personnel report A before us for acceptance. Motion from Mr. Marizio, second from Mr. Thorne. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. And B, support staff personnel report. Motion from Dr. Kramer, second from Mr. Marizio. Question,
There's a
yes.
lot of monitors there, and can I have that explained to me? I think I know the answer, but I want Mr. Bowles.
Please ask that question again.
I think we're approving, I think it's in support staff. I hope I didn't goof up about monitors, and I think it's
They-
10, 11 of them.
They're the hall monitors. We've had our bus drivers will drive, and then in between runs, one of the things that we wanted to ensure at our secondary buildings is to make sure we had enough people in the hallways, in the lunchrooms, just all overall safety concerns. So people have volunteered to work and fill that gap, because it's very difficult to just find, for that limited amount of time, someone to be a hall monitor or work in the lunchroom. And so it's a win-win. We have extra bodies, and some of these bus drivers actually know some of the students, and so it's helpful. So that's where that's come from, especially at our secondary levels.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that motion is carried. This time, we do not have anything brought before us for executive session unless there's a board member that wants to make a motion to go into one for an appropriate topic. If there is one, I see none, so seeing nothing there, I'll accept a motion for adjournment. Motion from Mr. Marizio, second from Mr. Moody Woosick. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried at 7:12 PM.